You're listening to the Trade Show Insights Podcast, Season 14, Episode 4. I'm your host and exhibit marketing strategist, Marlis Arnold, bringing you tools to improve your exhibit results. On today's episode, brought to you by the Exhibit Marketers Cafe, we're talking giveaways. And we've got a guest expert sharing what you need to know and what you need to ask before buying your next giveaway item.
Well, I met our guest for today at an industry event, and we were seated with a group of people at a dinner table, and our dinner conversation turned to giveaways gone wrong. And since she is a promotional products expert, I wanted to invite her here to Trade Show Insights to give us some tips on what to think about before you order any of your next giveaway items. So let me introduce her real quick, and then we'll get started. Rama Beerfas is the founder and owner, although she prefers the title Chief Solutions Specialist, at Lev Promotions, a promotional marketing consulting company founded in 2002. She works with clients to create strategic memorability through promotional products to promote connections with clients and prospects. She earned a BA in Spanish from Cal State Northridge and a BA in Hospitality Management from UNLV. She earned her MAS, or Master Advertising Specialist, in 2018 and is currently pursuing her CTSM, which, if you're not familiar, is the Certified Trade Show Marketer designation. So welcome to the podcast today, Rama.
Thank you, Marlis. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm really, this is going to be a fun conversation.
We shared some stories.
we had some interesting stories that night at dinner, and I want to just start out and some of the stories that came from various people around the table of some of the things, giveaways that really can go sideways that sometimes we don't think about. And one of those is a new hot trend, which is those reusable straws. And you had some thoughts on that I hadn't thought about before. So let's start there.
Yeah, it's an item that's not just trendy, but it's becoming almost necessary with so many states, cities, municipalities banning single-use disposable straws. Mm-hmm. It's getting to the point that we kind of almost have to have a straw with us. So it's becoming actually a pretty decent idea for a promotional giveaway. Now, there's a few different kinds. There's the stainless steel, mm-hmm. and then there's the silicone version. And it's still new, but maybe because I'm a mom, maybe because I look at it from all different angles, I see some issues with some of these items, and I like to make sure that when I'm recommending them to clients that they're aware of everything that they need to take into consideration. For instance, on the stainless steel, there's usually an option either to engrave them, or there are some companies that are actually printing on them, so like a pad print, mm-hmm. which requires ink, which I'm not all that comfortable with because it's either going to be up there very close to where your mouth is touching the straw, and even though they're using food-grade ink, it probably is not going to be very durable. It'll come off when it's washed. Granted, probably after a fair number of washings, but it will eventually wash off.
Yeah.
And me, I really just would rather not have something printed that close to my mouth when I'm drinking something. I don't know about you, but I'm not all that comfortable with it.
Right.
So I'm looking at when you're choosing a stainless steel straw, go for that engraved option. I've even got some companies that, because it's engraved, they can even personalize it, which is kind of an added bonus for something as personal as a straw. So,
yeah, well, and it helps you keep track of it so you don't get it mixed up with anybody else's.
Exactly. So, as far as I'm concerned, if you're going the stainless steel route, you really should be looking for the engraved version. As far as the silicone versions, my biggest concern with that is that they're really designed to bend or kind of fit into a container so that they're basically doing kind of a spiral into their container. Mm-hmm. If you're putting them in there and they're not thoroughly dry, and I don't know how you can tell when they're thoroughly dry on the inside, we're talking about the possibility of some really icky stuff growing inside of them. And
well, yeah, because, I mean, people are going to use the straw, and then they're not necessarily, if they're out and about, they're not necessarily going to wash it right away. They're going to fold it back up, put it in the container, and take it home, and
exactly
wash it later. But
and even if it's washed, even water left in a straw like that, if the water can't evaporate, it's going to be in there. And we all know what happens when water stays inside of something or on something and can't naturally evaporate. You get all sorts of icky things growing. You get funky smells. So I'm a little bit concerned about those versions as well, just from a health point of view. I think time will tell. It might be one of these types of items that I'm always a little bit more cautious with at the beginning of their sales cycles, because we're all still kind of working out the kinks of how this is going to work, carrying around your own personal straw and the health issues that might be involved with it. So I tend to be a little bit more on the cautious side and point out these things to my clients. They take them into full consideration because, that funky-looking silicone straw in these bright neon colors might be really cool, but not if you're throwing it away after the third use because it smells horrible when you take it out of its container.
Right, right. Well, and like you said, it's like, it may be something that's really cool, but not necessarily that you want to have your name attached to it when you're giving it away if there's problems.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of thought that needs to go into an item like this before you connect your name to it, because like I said, especially at this point, there's still some health considerations that I don't think everyone has fully taken into account. So,
right. Right. Well, let's shift from the, something that's very low-tech to some tech gadgets. And we also had some stories. I know one person at the table shared an absolute horror story on a flash drive where the flash drive that they were giving away at the booth to high-profile media people, loaded with all their PR on it, had a virus preloaded on it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I was not the one to share that story, but I could have been the one to share that story because it happened to a client of mine who actually did not buy the USB drives from me because they found them at a substantially lower price online and did not take into account that when it comes to high-tech items, particularly things that you're asking the recipients to plug into their own tech, whether it be a computer or plug it into a phone, whatever it is that you're asking them to plug into, so whether it's USB drives or power banks or whatever it is, cheap is not the way to go.
No.
You can do inexpensive, but you shouldn't do cheap, and there is a difference. When you're buying a flash drive, and for that matter, I think even things like power banks, so anything that plugs into, for whatever capacity, your recipient's tech items, you want to buy them from someone that you know and trust. And preferably someone who can answer some basic questions for you. So in the case of USB drives, you want to ask the question, is this Tier 1 memory? And I could go on and on and on about Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, but what's important to know is that Tier 1 memory is the top grade memory. It's the type of memory that companies like Samsung and Sony and all those big names that have to put memory into their tech equipment, that's the type of memory that they're putting. Once you get down to Tier 2 and Tier 3, it means that they haven't been able to pass certain quality tests. So the lower down on the grade you go, the less quality tests they've been able to pass. Now, that can mean several things. It could mean that there are viruses in those memory chips. It could mean that they will last, you'll plug them in, and they will last 1 use, 5 uses, and then nothing.
Which when you're saving things on a flash drive, that's really bad.
Exactly. It could mean, there's a gamut of things, but those are usually the two top problems that we have with memory chip-enabled items, such as USB flash drives, is that if they're not Tier 1, there's a fair likelihood that they could have a virus on them. You don't want to be putting viruses on your clients' computers, laptops, wherever they're plugging them in. And the other problem is their life expectancy, which they could live forever. They may not even work the first time that someone tries to plug them in. And again, your logo is on there. You don't want that associated with your brand name. So
exactly.
Ask the question, even if you know and trust the company that you're working with for promotional products, ask the question, is this Tier 1 memory? If the answer is no, don't buy it. If the answer is, I don't know, you either need to find someone else to be working with, or you need to make sure that they're getting the education they need so they can provide the type of products that you need.
Right. Right. Well, and that's really great because, I mean, that's something that most of us have never heard of, the different tiers of memory and flash drives. So, that's a question nobody would think to ask up front.
You're right. Most people don't know anything about it and don't understand the differences. And the differences are the make or break in this particular type of item. Just like with items like power banks, people should be asking, have these passed certifications? Now, there's 3 or 4 different kinds of valid certifications based on whether they're being certified in Europe, in Canada, the U.S. The most common one that we're all familiar with here in the United States is UL, which is Underwriters Laboratory, which means these items have been tested and they are as safe as is humanly possible at that moment to know about. We can all have problems with batteries, and we all know what happened to Samsung a few years ago, and I'm sure they were not buying inexpensive batteries, and I'm sure that they were testing, and yet there was a problem. Power banks that have not been tested, especially when they were first coming out on the market, and they've gotten better since then, but there are still plenty out there that have not been certified by organizations such as Underwriters Laboratory. They've been known to overheat batteries and cause fires and explosions.
Yikes.
So you want to make sure that anything that you're purchasing in the realm of power banks, or anything that has any kind of electronic component to it, or lithium-ion battery component to it, has been UL tested. Because otherwise you're running the risk of overheating and fires. There's a reason you're paying less in some cases.
Right.
That testing is worth its weight in your reputation.
Now, what about, because you said the UL is the U.S. certification. What about for the products that are being manufactured? A lot of them are manufactured overseas. Do they have a different type of certification, or will they still say UL listed?
There's different types of certification. There's one, it's mostly logos, and I frankly don't know the name of all of them. I recognize them when I see the logo, but there's one that's like a CE that's approved. That one might it's either Canadian or European.
I've seen that one. I think that is European.
Yeah, and even the ones that are brought here, even if they're made in China, a good portion of them, they're actually tested here to make sure that they meet CPSIA standards, which is basically Federal Consumer Product Safety Standards.
Okay.
If they can't pass those standards, they cannot legally be sold in this country.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, too, because, we're all familiar with the UL listed logo, but that's probably not something that we're thinking about when looking at promotional products. So
exactly.
It's another one of those good things to just keep in mind when you're looking. So do you have other tech gadget tips of things that we should be looking for or avoiding?
I think when it comes to anything tech, again, inexpensive and cheap are 2 very different things. If you're looking at it, and I had someone come into my booth when I was at Exhibitor Live and say that she's buying power banks for $5 a pop. And I said, if you're comfortable with that, go, because I can't meet or beat that price in any way, shape, or form. I don't know anyone who is selling power banks at any capacity, even like 1,800 milliamps, which is about the lowest you can get, for $5 a pop, unless you're buying maybe 28,000 of them. And she said, oh, no, I just buy a few hundred at a time. I took a deep breath and said, please go back to your office and make sure that they're UL listed. Please, I beg you. If the price is too good to be true, if you know what they're selling for at retail and you're paying a fraction of that, something's not right.
Right.
And protect your clients, protect your prospects, and for goodness sake, protect your reputation and your brand. Because if it's too good to be true, something's going to happen at some point along the line, probably. You can go inexpensive. You know, you can buy power banks that have, as I said, 1,800 is about the lowest that I know of. Well, there's some that are even less than that, but you're never going to get even close to a full charge. But for the most part, the least expensive little power banks, the ones that are shaped like little bricks, they usually run 2,200 to 2,400 milliamps. If you want to save money, go for those lower amperages. If you want to splurge a little more, maybe buy fewer of them and go for the higher ones. But budget is a concern. Look where you can save money and make it reasonable, but don't go cheap. If it's too good to be true, it's not true. It's as simple as that. And we all have a pretty good feel. You can look at an item, you know what it goes for at retail. You can expect possibly to pay a little bit more for it if your logo is emblazoned on it. But if you're paying a small fraction of what you see it for at a retail outlet, pass it by, please, before you set someone on fire.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know which would be worse, to give them a virus or to blow up their phone.
It's a toss-up.
So, well, let's move on to talking about not just, things like that we need to look at, but just thinking about giveaways in general. One of the things that is one of my pet peeves, and I know you and I have talked about this, is giving away stuff that is just definitely going to get thrown away because they can't take it home. Like at the construction show I was at, where somebody was giving away those big chunky wooden yardsticks. And so you leave the convention center, and especially at the airport, and it looks like these strange bouquets of sticks in the trash can because nobody can take that on a plane.
And it's funny because I have heard over and over, specifically about those yardsticks, how popular they are. I've heard this from other people that I know who are promotional products professionals. Oh, yeah, my client can't get enough. They're the most popular thing. Everybody wants one. It's wonderful if everybody wants one, but just because everybody takes one does not make it an appropriate promotional product that will actually help you create strategic memorability, other than for the people at the trash cans at TSA. They'll remember you forever.
Exactly. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're exhibiting at your local home show,
absolutely.
Everybody's driving in, so it's perfect for that. So, those are one of those things. It's like you've got to stop and think, okay, who's my audience and what's their mode of transportation?
Exactly. And that's one of the things. I kind of have my 4 rules for trade show giveaways. And the first one is, you need to know where your folks are coming from. So as you said, if it's like a little tabletop show or like a county fair or something like that, where the majority of people that are coming in are locals and they're driving in and out, the rules don't necessarily apply. I think my last 3 still apply, but you don't have to worry about it being TSA friendly. If the majority of people are coming in and out, whether it's any type of public transportation, because they check for certain things on certain trains and even buses. So my rule is, if you know people are coming in from a distance, they're not just driving their own personal cars in, it must be TSA friendly. Because otherwise, it's going to stay in the hotel room and the maids are going to love it, or it's going to end up in the trash can at TSA, and what a shame. Because that's not how you want your brand to be remembered. So, first of all, know where your audience is coming from, and if they're coming from any kind of distance, be sure it's TSA friendly. My last 3 rules really kind of apply no matter where you're exhibiting or where your event is. And that is, number 1, you don't want it to be heavy. No one wants to schlep around something that is just going to make their arms ache after a while, especially if they're collecting other things along the way. So they may take it. It may be very popular until it gets too heavy, and then they start leaving it in other booths and on shelves and in the bathroom and in the trash can.
True.
The other thing, and again, this applies a little bit more if people are flying in and out, don't make it bulky. A lot of people do not take checked luggage anymore if they can get away with it.
I don't.
And if it's bulky and you can't fit it into your very full, overstuffed carry-on, it's staying behind in the hotel room. And again, the maids will love you, but what good is it to you?
I've left a lot of gifts for the maids over the years.
Yep. Well, I can tell you a story personally. I used to be in hospitality management, and I was a front office manager at a hotel that saw quite a bit of, we had a little bit of convention space in the hotel itself, and we had a group come in that was, this was probably about 30 years ago. I think they were something about barbecue. And I can't remember who was sponsoring it or what, but one of the exhibitors there, one of the sponsors, had custom-made 10-gallon hats, and they were used as room drop gifts.
Oh, my.
Can you imagine? The maids thought it was great because no one wanted to. They all wore them in and around the hotel to all the events. They all thought it was cool. And when it came time to pack their bags, they didn't want to wear it on the plane, and they knew they weren't going to. And this was long before 2001. So they didn't know what to do with it. The maids and their kids were thrilled because probably at least
every maid got probably 5 to 10 hats.
Each, it was like 75% of the people who attended the thing left their hats behind in the room.
That's
beautiful, expensive, custom-made, logo, 10-gallon hats.
Wow.
I could not believe how much money they must have spent on these things, and they ended up getting left for the maids, and the maids were happy and thrilled and all of that, which was wonderful for them, but kind of not so wonderful for the people who wanted their brand remembered. So definitely stay with something that's easily packable in a carry-on.
Yes. Well, and kind of a side note on that, from the attendee perspective, one thing that I do, because I have my own FedEx account, so I take some prepaid FedEx labels with me. If there is something big like that is valuable, that is something that I know that I want, I ship it home.
Right.
So, but
and that's definitely an option, but most people don't think of that.
Are just not going to bother. No.
Exactly. They don't think of it. They don't want to deal with it. Nowadays, so many of these hotels charge a fee if you want to FedEx in and out. So unless you know where the FedEx drop box is on the local corner, if you try to do it through the hotel, a lot of them are now charging at least $10 on top of what you're paying in FedEx fees. So
true.
A lot of people just won't bother with it unless it's something they want. In fact, what I tell my clients is if it's something big and bulky, especially if it's more like a prize or an award, just offer to mail it back for them. You pick up the cost of the mailings. Don't put that on them, because what's going to end up is they're not even going to pick it up, or they're going to leave it in the hotel room, and then you'll have wasted all that money on the item, and it does no one any good. So if you're going to spend the money on the item, be willing to ship it for your clients if that's an option.
I did actually have that happen recently at a show where an exhibitor offered to ship a sample kit home for me, because it was, it was like a shoebox size kit. So they're like, hey, just, fill out your information here on the label and we'll get this shipped out to you and you'll have it next week. So
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So, think ahead a little bit. Again, it's worth it to get fewer of these items if you know you're going to absorb the cost of the shipping, and really give them out only to whoever has met your pre-qualification criteria that you should set in order to even be giving stuff out to begin with. But that's a whole different story.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, exactly. My last criteria is actually it should not be breakable. So if, for instance, I still have clients who come to me who say, we want to do mugs. And I'll look at them and I go, ceramic mugs? Yeah, we want to do coffee mugs. I'm like, okay, you're now breaking 3 of my rules for event giveaways. They're heavy because the average ceramic mug weighs 1 pound. Some weigh more. They're bulky, and they're breakable, which means that if you're schlepping around a bag of goodies and you get to wherever it is that you finally get to sit down, and you don't think about it, you just kind of drop that bag to the floor.
Yeah.
And if you end up with shards of ceramic or glass or whatever it is that's breakable in there, now people are afraid to go in there and pick out what it is that they do want from their bag because they're afraid of getting cut, and they're mad at you. There was an exhibitor, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago at Exhibitor Live, that was giving out light bulb-shaped containers filled with jelly beans. Now, there were all sorts of issues with this particular one. I actually did a case study on it where I did it as a don't. But there are plastic light bulb-shaped containers that you can fill with all sorts of candy. they were not using these. They were using glass light bulbs. So they were heavy.
Yeah.
They were breakable.
Yeah.
And the funniest part is I actually brought one home with me because I knew I wanted to use it as a case study for don't do this. And when I tried to get a jelly bean out, they had all kind of stuck together inside. So you can't even tap it on the counter to shake out those jelly beans because it's a glass container. So there were all sorts of issues which just had me laughing to no end. But what they kept telling me was, we keep putting them out and people keep taking them, and we keep putting them out and people keep taking them.
But
yeah, because they're a snack or they're taking them home to their kids. But the funny thing is that I actually saw a trash can about 4 aisles down from where they were that had a bunch of these things in them because people realized they were really heavy to schlep around the floor.
Or they tried to shake the jelly beans out and they were stuck and they just said forget it and threw them
Forget it. Yeah, it's who knows what was going through their minds, and there were other issues again with that particular promotion, but. Really, why are you doing glass light bulbs? Do the plastic version. They're less expensive. They're easier to carry around. They're not going to break.
I would never even thought of looking at the glass ones because there are plastic ones. I mean, I would have opted for plastic first. So
I don't know how hard they had to look to find the glass ones because out of curiosity, I did a search and there were 10 of my vendor companies that sell these things. And there was only 1 out of the 10 that actually sold one in a glass version. They must have worked really hard to find the glass version of it.
Yeah,
what a shame. Because imagine how much extra they had to pay in shipping just to get in there.
Exactly. Yeah, it was heavy for them to ship too. Well, and one other criteria, but it kind of falls under your first one of TSA friendly, is nothing liquid, because liquid / I'll put sticky. I was at a show one time, and an exhibitor from Canada was giving away little bottles of maple syrup. And again, I believe it's been long enough ago, but I'm pretty sure it was glass, like you said. And I'm just like, I don't think I'm even going to try this. So I think like it said, it's been too long, but I think what I ended up doing was I had it in my hotel room, and I got something from the hotel's breakfast of English muffins or something, poured a little maple syrup on it so I could try it, and then I was like, I just left it behind because there's no way I'm taking that home in my suitcase.
No, it's a tough thing, especially now, you have to put all your little liquids together, and I really don't want to put something edible in with my shampoo either. So if one leaks, I don't want to deal with it. There are a few little exceptions to that. I might tell certain clients, because at trade shows people tend not to have hand sanitizer or hand lotion or stuff like that. But I always make sure whatever it is that it's in TSA approved size bottles. Right. That way you can slip it into that little bag. And, at the end of the day, if you've used it and enjoyed it on the show floor, you will at least remember who it was who gave it to you, even if you do have to leave it behind. Yeah. But as long as it's in TSA-sized bottles, 9 times out of 10 people will keep them and just send them through. But you don't need to send a food item or a liquid food item unless they were doing it as samples. Do what you need to do. If you're selling syrup, you kind of almost have to do that because I don't really want to have syrup in a cup and do syrup tasting.
It was just
because of where they were from. Yeah,
it was a Canadian company, and they thought it'd be cool to give away these little bottles of syrup.
Yeah, cool is not always appropriate. I caution my clients when you're looking for promotional products. The questions to ask are not what's hot, new, cool, trendy. None of those words are the words you should be asking. The words you should be asking for are what will work for my target market.
Mm-hmm. What will they appreciate?
Yep. Who is the target market? If you don't know who your target market is, who you're working with should be able to help you figure that out. But that's what's important. It's not what's hot, new, trendy, cool, whatever adjective you want to use on that side of the realm. It's really what would be appreciated, what would catch their attention that would work for them, that has some strategic memorability component to it, that also fits your branding and your messaging. Because if it's something out of left field that has nothing to do with what you do and doesn't tie into your messaging or your call to action in any way, no one's going to associate that item with you, even if your name's printed on it.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to look at it and go, "What did all it's going to be is a name?" And if they don't know who you are already, they're going to go, "What did they do?" They're going to have no association at all.
Right. Well, and circling back to giving away something that they'll actually use, the idea of the little mini hand sanitizer, odds are, if, people are like me, I tend to keep, if I've got a little bitty TSA-sized bottle, I just keep it and refill it.
Exactly.
So once I've used up the hand sanitizer that was in it when they gave it to me, I keep filling it up. It stays in my 311. I'm seeing their logo every time I travel.
Exactly. My funny thing is, and I have people coming up to me all the time, locally and even at when I'm out of town, I do mints that have my logo on the label, and they're kind of like in Tic Tac shaped containers. And I have people running up to me who said, "Oh, I need new mints. And by the way, I'm using your container to hold my bobby pins, my straight pins, my loose buttons. There's also paper clips, all sorts of little items that they can fit in there." And so I know my logo is staying in front of them no matter what's in that bottle. My label is still on that bottle or on that container, and they're looking at me every day, and they're running up to me at networking events and telling me about it. So I'm good with that.
I was going to say, obviously you've got the memorability factor working for you there.
And they're asking for more mints, so,
exactly.
Fine.
Exactly. I love it. Well, Rama, any final thoughts? I think you've given people a lot to consider that they probably never even thought about, but any final words of wisdom for, when you're shopping for giveaways?
Choose items wisely. Consider them in the context of your overall marketing strategy, because promotional products should not live in a vacuum. They should be part of the holistic messaging that you're putting out there and fit in with everything else that you're doing from a marketing standpoint. They're not some anomaly. They are a viable marketing tool that can show you ROI and ROO if you choose right, distribute them right, and put the metrics in place so that you can measure that ROI and ROO.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that's a great place to wrap up. Thank you so much, Rama, for being our guest today on Trade Show Insights.
Oh, it was entirely my pleasure, Marlis. Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed what you heard today and would like to spread the word about the Trade Show Insights podcast, please take a minute to leave a rating and or review in iTunes. This helps to boost visibility so more people will find the show. Trade Show Insights is protected by the Creative Commons copyright license. You may feel free to share this recording with colleagues or embed it on your own blog as long as it is shared in its entirety and is not used for commercial purposes. To learn more, please see the link in the sidebar of the show notes at tradeshowinsights.com. Well, that's it for this episode of Trade Show Insights. Be sure to check out our show notes and archives at tradeshowinsights.com. You can also connect with me using the social media links or contact page on the site. I'm Marlis Arnold. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us next time for more tools to improve your exhibit results.